I'll never forget the night it all unraveled. It was March, a regular Friday evening, or so I thought. I had dozed off on the couch waiting for Anna, my wife of nearly a decade, to come home from her late-night restaurant shift. The kids were tucked in bed, and the house was quiet, except for the occasional creak of the old floors as I shifted uncomfortably, trying to stay awake. It was 1:30 a.m. when I woke up. The house was still silent, but my wife wasn't home. I checked the time and frowned. It wasn't unusual for Anna to go out with her coworkers after work. She had started doing that a lot more recently, but she'd never stayed out this late without letting me know. I called her phone, and on the third ring, she finally picked up. Her voice was thick with something. Alcohol, sleep, or both. "I drank too much," she mumbled. "I'm at Monica's. I'll be home in the morning." Something didn't sit right. Monica, her best friend, and I had crossed paths earlier that night at our daughter's dance practice. She had gone straight home afterward, as far as I knew. Why would Anna be at her place? My stomach churned with unease, but I didn't press her. Not yet. Instead, I sat there on the couch, staring blankly at the dark TV screen, my mind racing with half-formed questions. As I mulled over her story, I remembered the location-sharing app we used for our daughter's phone. We'd synced our phones for convenience, but tonight, it might give me the answers I needed. I opened the app and immediately felt the air leave my lungs. Anna's phone wasn't at Monica's house. It was several miles away, at an apartment complex. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs. I knew that building. She'd once pointed it out while we were driving, casually mentioning that her coworker, Dan, lived there. Dan. He was the 24-year-old line cook at her restaurant, the one she used to talk about all the time. At first, it was harmless work banter, the kind of stuff you laugh about over dinner. But then came the comments about how Dan would flirt with her, telling her she was pretty, how he made her feel good about herself. I'd voiced my discomfort, and Anna had promised to shut it down. Months later, Dan's name stopped coming up, and I thought the issue had resolved itself. I sat there for hours, paralyzed by the realization that it hadn't. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and they painted an ugly picture. At 5:30 a.m., the garage door finally creaked open, and Anna stumbled inside. She looked disheveled, her makeup smudged, her eyes heavy. The scent of alcohol lingered in the air between us as she mumbled a greeting, heading straight for the stairs. "Wait," I said, my voice more steady than I felt. "Where were you last night?" She froze, her back to me. After a brief pause, she repeated the story about Monica. "I saw Monica at dance practice last night," I said quietly. "She was home with her daughter after that." Her shoulders stiffened, but she turned to face me, her expression guarded. "I was with Natalie then, another friend from work." "Natalie lives in a house," I replied, each word feeling heavier than the last. "Your location showed you in an apartment building." The silence between us stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, I asked the question I'd been dreading. "Are you having an affair with Dan?" She looked at me, her eyes brimming with something I couldn't quite place. Shame? Resignation? Then, she nodded. Just once. The room seemed to shrink around me. For a moment, all I could hear was the rush of blood in my ears. I wanted to yell, to demand answers, but all I managed to say was, "Why?" Her answer wasn't one I'd fully process until much later. Something about feeling lost, unhappy, needing an escape. The details blurred together in a haze of anger and hurt. That morning, I told her we needed time to figure out if this marriage could even be saved. She agreed to end things with Dan and to try to work on us. But as I lay awake that night, staring at the empty space beside me in bed, I knew things would never be the same. The morning after her confession, the house felt different, quieter, heavier, the kind of silence that seeps into your bones. Anna and I avoided eye contact as we moved through the motions of breakfast with the kids, each of us playing the role of normalcy. I could tell she wanted to talk, to say something, but I wasn't ready. I needed time to think, to figure out how to make sense of what was happening. As soon as the kids were at school, Anna approached me in the kitchen. Her face was pale, her usual spark replaced by something hollow. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was lost." Lost. The word hung in the air like a slap. Lost? I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. You got lost, and somehow that led you to Dan's apartment? Her eyes brimmed with tears. It wasn't about him, she insisted. It was about me. I felt like I'd lost myself, and he made me feel. Don't, I cut her off, holding up a hand. Don't justify it. I've spent years bending over backward to support you. I've taken on extra responsibilities, given you the space to figure out what makes you happy. And this is what you did with it? She flinched, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of guilt, but it was quickly swallowed by anger. I need time, I said firmly, to think, to figure out if there's anything left to salvage. Anna nodded, her gaze fixed on the floor. I'll end it, she promised. I'll tell him it's over. Her words didn't comfort me. She'd already lied to me so many times. About her whereabouts, about her feelings for Dan. How could I trust her now? But I didn't argue. I just walked out of the room, needing space to clear my head. Later that afternoon, I called Monica. As Anna's best friend, she knew her better than anyone, and I needed her perspective. Monica, I began cautiously, I know this is awkward, but I found out about Anna and Dan. Did you know? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Finally, Monica sighed. I didn't know for sure, but I suspected, she admitted. She's been different lately, guarded, and she's been using me as an excuse for some of her late nights. I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding paranoid. I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. She said she's ending it. Do you think she'll actually go through with it? I don't know, Monica said honestly. Dan's young, and she's been wrapped up in the attention he gives her. But if she really wants to fix things with you, she'll have to cut him off completely. I thanked her for her honesty, but the conversation left me feeling even more unsettled. If Anna had been lying to both of us, what else was she hiding? That evening, Anna told me she'd broken things off with Dan. She said she'd met him at a coffee shop earlier in the day and told him it was over. He was upset, she said, her voice trembling. But I made it clear that I want to fix things with you. With us. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But her words felt empty, like a hollow echo of the trust we'd once shared. When she went to bed that night, I stayed up, scrolling through my thoughts like a broken record. The betrayal was one thing. The lies, the deception, the months she spent hiding this from me, that was something else entirely. I thought about our wedding day, the vows we made. I thought about the years we spent building a life together, raising our kids, supporting each other through tough times. And I thought about how easily it had all unraveled. For the first time in years, I didn't see Anna as my partner. I saw her as a stranger. The following weeks were a blur of half-hearted attempts to repair what was broken. We went to therapy, where Anna cried and apologized while I sat in stony silence. We went on awkward date nights that felt like strained business meetings. One night, after a particularly tense therapy session, Anna asked me, "Do you think we can get back to the way things were?" I looked at her, and for the first time, I let myself be completely honest. "I don't know," I said quietly. "I don't know if I'll ever trust you again." The pain in her eyes was palpable, but I didn't regret saying it. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, and the cracks in our marriage felt like they were growing wider with every passing day. As much as I wanted to believe we could fix this, a nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered the truth. Some things, once broken, can never be made whole again. A week after Anna claimed to have ended things with Dan, I started hearing whispers that painted a different story. It began with a text from an unknown number. The message was brief but devastating. "Anna is still seeing Dan. I thought you should know." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. The message came from someone who claimed to work at the restaurant with Anna and Dan. I asked for details, and the person didn't hold back. They told me Anna was still sneaking around, meeting Dan during breaks and after shifts. She was using the same excuses she had before, claiming to work late, hanging out with Monica, to cover her tracks. This was the tipping point. The last fragile thread of hope I'd been clinging to snapped. The next day, I reached out to Monica. She had become something of a confidant through this ordeal, someone who could give me insight into Anna's mind. Monica already knew about the affair. She'd been blindsided when Anna confessed it to her shortly after I found out. I think she's still seeing him, I told Monica. Monica sighed heavily on the other end of the line. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, she said. She's been so deep in this thing with Dan that I don't know if she even knows how to stop. That's when Monica suggested the intervention. I'll get a few of the girls from work together, she said. We'll sit her down and make her face the reality of what she's doing. She needs to hear from someone other than you or me how much she's screwing up her life. I was hesitant at first. It felt extreme, almost cruel. But as Monica explained her plan, I realized it might be the only way to snap Anna out of whatever spell she was under. The intervention was set for a Saturday afternoon. Monica and her friends arranged to meet Anna at Monica's house under the guise of a casual get-together. I played my part, driving Anna there after we spent the morning with the kids. She didn't suspect a thing, at least not until we pulled up to Monica's house, and she saw the extra cars in the driveway. What's going on? Anna asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. You'll see, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Her eyes darted to mine, and for a split second, I saw fear flash across her face. She hesitated, gripping the door handle but not moving to open it. Anna, you need to go inside, I said firmly. No, she said, shaking her head. I don't like this. You don't have to like it, I snapped, my patience fraying. You just have to face it. She glared at me, her lips pressed into a tight line. But after a long moment, she opened the door and got out. I didn't follow her. This was her battle to fight. Hours later, Anna returned home. Her face was pale, her eyes puffy from crying. She didn't say much as she dropped her purse by the door and sank onto the couch. I sat across from her, waiting for her to speak. They told me I need to make a choice, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. And? She looked down at her hands, picking at her fingernails. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what I want. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. After everything, the lies, the betrayal, the therapy sessions, she still wasn't sure if she wanted to save our marriage or stay with Dan. I can't keep doing this, Anna, I said, my voice breaking. You need to figure it out, because I can't keep waiting for you to decide if I'm enough for you. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, but she didn't say anything else. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt the chasm between us grow wider. Anna promised to think about everything and give me an answer soon, but I didn't believe her. She'd made promises before, and each time, they'd turned out to be hollow. For the first time since this nightmare began, I started to accept that our marriage might already be over. In the weeks following the intervention, life at home became a delicate balancing act of forced civility and unspoken tension. Anna and I tiptoed around each other, pretending for the kids' sake that everything was fine. But behind closed doors, the cracks in our marriage were more visible than ever. Anna swore she had ended things with Dan after the intervention, but I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was still off. She was on her phone constantly, always turning the screen away when I walked by. She'd leave the room to take calls, claiming they were from friends or her mom, but the explanations never felt convincing. I tried to ignore it at first, telling myself that I had to trust her if we had any chance of rebuilding. We were still going to therapy. After all, she was making an effort, wasn't she? But trust is a fragile thing, and mine had been shattered. One evening, Anna suggested we go out for a date night. She said she wanted to reconnect, to try and rekindle what we had lost. Reluctantly, I agreed. I told myself it was a good sign, her way of showing that she was committed to making things work. We went to a small Italian restaurant we used to love back in college. The kind of place with dim lighting, checkered tablecloths, and candles that flickered in wine bottles. It should have felt nostalgic, romantic even, but the atmosphere only highlighted how strained we'd become. The conversation was stilted, like two strangers trying to make small talk at a bus stop. She asked about work. I asked about the kids' schedules. We avoided anything deeper, both of us too afraid to address the elephant in the room. Halfway through the meal, I finally broke the silence. Do you really think we can fix this? I asked, my voice low. Anna froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. I want to, she said after a long pause. I'm trying, aren't I? Trying doesn't mean much if you're still hiding things, I said, my frustration bubbling to the surface. Are you still talking to him, Anna? Be honest. Her eyes flicked down to her plate. For a moment, I thought she might come clean, but she just shook her head. No, I told you, it's over. I wanted to believe her, but the doubt in her voice was impossible to ignore. A few days later, the truth came out. It was late at night, and I was sitting in the living room, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. A text popped up from the same unknown number that had messaged me before. She's still seeing him. I saw them together after work tonight. My stomach dropped. I replied, asking for proof, and within minutes, they sent me a blurry photo of Anna and Dan standing outside his car in the restaurant parking lot. She was leaning against the door, her posture relaxed, while he stood close, their heads tilted toward each other in a way that didn't look remotely professional. I stared at the photo, a mix of anger and heartbreak welling up inside me. I had given her another chance, trusted her, let her back into my life, and this was how she repaid me. The next morning, I confronted her. Do you have something you want to tell me? I asked as she sipped her coffee at the kitchen table. She looked up, her expression wary. What are you talking about? I held up my phone, showing her the photo. This, I said, my voice sharp. Explain this. Her face went pale, and for a moment, she just stared at the screen, as if willing it to disappear. Finally, she set her mug down and sighed. It wasn't what it looks like, she began, but I cut her off. Don't, I snapped. Don't insult my intelligence. I gave you another chance, Anna. I trusted you, and you're still lying to me. She started to cry, but her tears only made me angrier. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. It's not that simple. It is that simple, I shot back. You made a choice, Anna. You chose him, over and over again. And now, I'm making a choice too. Her eyes widened, panic flickering across her face. What do you mean? I mean I'm done, I said, my voice firm. I can't do this anymore. You've lied to me too many times. This marriage is over. For the first time since the affair began, I felt a strange sense of relief. The weight of trying to fix something that was beyond repair had finally lifted. Anna begged me to reconsider, promising once again to end things with Dan and focus on us. But I had heard it all before. This time, I wasn't going to let her pull me back in. That night, I started looking into lawyers. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I deserved better. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to move forward, without Anna. The days after I told Anna our marriage was over were a whirlwind of emotions and logistics. She begged me to reconsider, promising to cut all ties with Dan for good this time. But her words felt like empty echoes of promises she'd already broken. I'll do whatever it takes, she pleaded one night, tears streaming down her face. Couples therapy, quitting my job, blocking his number, anything. Please, just give me one more chance. I wanted to feel something, anger, sadness, maybe even pity, but I was numb. Anna, I said quietly, you've had more chances than I can count. I can't keep putting myself through this. I deserve better, and the kids deserve better than two parents living a lie. Her sobs filled the room as she buried her face in her hands. I stood there, unmoving, watching the woman I'd once loved fall apart. But no amount of tears could erase the months of betrayal and deception. The next few weeks were chaotic as we started the process of separating. Anna moved into the guest room, and we took turns caring for the kids while trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for them. I began consulting with lawyers, figuring out how to divide our assets and create a custody arrangement. One of the hardest parts was telling the kids. They were too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to sense that something was wrong. We sat them down one Saturday afternoon, both of us sitting side by side on the couch. Mommy and Daddy have decided to live in different houses, I explained, keeping my tone calm. We both love you very much, and this doesn't change that. You'll still see both of us all the time, but things will be a little different. Our oldest, who was only 8, frowned and asked, "Why can't you stay here together?" I felt my throat tighten, but Anna stepped in, her voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. Sometimes grown-ups don't get along the way they used to, she said. But this isn't your fault, okay? We both love you, and that will never change. The kids cried, and so did Anna, but I stayed stoic. I had to. If I let myself break down, I wasn't sure I'd be able to hold it together. Anna's moving day was surreal. She had rented a small apartment across town, close enough to the kids' school to make shared custody easier. Watching her pack up her belongings, our belongings, felt like the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. She paused at one point, holding a framed photo of us on our wedding day. I never thought it would end like this, she whispered. Neither did I replied, my voice flat. She left that afternoon, taking only a few essentials with her. The house felt emptier than ever, but also strangely lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. That night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat alone in the quiet house, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. Out of habit, I opened the dating app one had downloaded weeks earlier, mostly out of spite. I wasn't ready to date, not by a long shot, but the app felt like a way to remind myself that life could go on. As I swiped, a notification popped up from Monica. Hey, just checking in. How are you holding up? I hesitated for a moment before replying. Monica had been my rock throughout this entire ordeal, offering advice and a listening ear whenever I needed it. But now that Anna was out of the house, I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to keep leaning on her. Still, I typed back. Not great, but getting through it. Thanks for asking. Her response came quickly. If you ever need to talk, or just a distraction, I'm here. Something about her message gave me pause. It wasn't flirty or suggestive, but it felt different, warmer, more personal. I shook the thought away, chalking it up to my raw emotions. The days turned into weeks, and life slowly began to settle into a new routine. The kids adjusted better than I expected, though they still asked questions about when Mommy was coming back. I kept my answers honest but simple, always assuring them that they were loved. Meanwhile, I started to notice changes in myself. I was eating better, working out more, and even signed up for a local triathlon, a challenge I'd been putting off for years. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been lost in the chaos of marriage and parenthood. Anna, on the other hand, seemed to be spiraling. Word got back to me through Monica that she was still seeing Dan, and their relationship wasn't exactly the fairy tale she had imagined. He had lost his job after being caught using drugs at work, and rumors of his sketchy behavior were spreading fast. I should have felt sorry for her, but I didn't. She had made her choices, and now she was dealing with the consequences. My focus was on the kids, and on building a life where I didn't feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Monica texted me again. Want to grab a drink sometime? Just as friends. I think we both deserve a break. I stared at the message for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Was it too soon? Probably. But something inside me said yes anyway. When I walked into the bar that Friday night, I wasn't sure what to expect. Monica and I had known each other for years, first as casual acquaintances from double dates, then as confidants during the fallout of my marriage. But this felt different. The place was cozy, with low lighting and soft music playing in the background. Monica was already at a small booth in the corner, nursing a glass of wine. She looked up as I approached, flashing a warm smile that instantly put me at ease. Hey, she said, standing up to hug me. It was the kind of hug that lingers just long enough to feel meaningful without crossing any lines. Hey, I replied, sitting down across from her. Thanks for coming out. I feel like I haven't done this, just gone out and talked to someone, in years. She smiled knowingly. I get it. After my divorce, I forgot what it felt like to have adult conversations that weren't about the kids or the mess my ex left behind. For the first hour, we talked about everything except Anna and Dan. We laughed about work stories, swapped parenting mishaps, and even reminisced about the old double dates we used to have when our lives seemed so much simpler. But as the drinks flowed, the conversation inevitably turned to the elephant in the room. How are you holding up? She asked, her tone gentle. I shrugged, swirling the ice in my glass. Better than I thought I'd be, honestly. It's weird. For so long, I thought the hardest part would be losing Anna. But now, It's like I barely recognize the person she's become. It's not losing her that hurts. It's knowing I wasted so much time trying to save something that wasn't worth saving. Monica nodded, her expression thoughtful. I know what you mean. When James and I split, I kept blaming myself for not seeing the signs sooner. But you can't beat yourself up over it. You did what you thought was right at the time. Her words hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't just offering sympathy. She understood. She had been through it, too, and somehow come out stronger on the other side. By the time we left the bar, I felt lighter than I had in months. Monica hugged me again before we parted ways, and this time, it lingered a little longer. Let's do this again sometime, she said, her eyes sparkling under the dim streetlights. I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. Yeah, I'd like that. The next few weeks passed in a blur of new routines and unexpected surprises. I threw myself into work, parenting, and training for the triathlon. I started to feel like myself again, not just a husband or a father, but a person with dreams and goals of my own. Monica and I kept in touch, texting almost daily. Sometimes it was lighthearted banter. Other times, it was deeper conversations about life and love and everything in between. She became the person I looked forward to hearing from at the end of a long day. It wasn't long before we started spending more time together. One Saturday, I invited her and her daughter over for a barbecue. Watching her interact with my kids, laughing and joking like she had known them forever, felt natural, comfortable. As the sun set and the kids ran around the backyard chasing fireflies, Monica and I sat on the porch, sipping beers and watching the chaos unfold. Your kids are amazing, she said, her voice soft. Thanks, I replied. They seem to like you too. She smiled, but there was something hesitant in her expression. Do you think this is too soon? I knew what she meant. After everything with Anna, jumping into a new relationship, especially with her ex-best friend, wasn't exactly conventional. But sitting there with Monica, it didn't feel wrong. It felt like a fresh start. I don't know, I admitted, but I know I'm happier when you're around. And right now, that's enough for me. We didn't officially call it dating for a while, but it was clear to both of us that things were heading in that direction. Slowly but surely, Monica became a part of my new normal. She didn't try to replace Anna or overstep her role, but her presence brought a sense of stability and joy I hadn't felt in years. In the months following Anna's move out, the divide between her life and mine became stark. I was finally finding my footing, building a healthier, happier routine for myself and the kids, while Anna's world seemed to be crumbling. It started with Dan. Shortly after Anna moved into her new apartment, word got out that their relationship wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined. Monica filled me in on the details she'd heard through mutual friends. Dan had been fired from the restaurant for being caught high at work, and rumors about his drug use began to spread. Anna, desperate to keep him afloat, covered his expenses, including buying him a used car and helping him pay rent. She's trying to save him, Monica told me one evening over the phone. But he's dragging her down with him. The fallout hit Anna hard. Without Dan's job to anchor their relationship, his true colors began to show. He was unreliable, argumentative, and increasingly absent. But Anna clung to him, unwilling, or maybe unable, to let go of the man she'd risked everything for. The stress started to affect her parenting. She was late picking up the kids from school more than once, and when she did show up, she looked exhausted and frazzled. The kids began asking questions I didn't know how to answer. Why is Mommy always so tired? My son asked one day. I bit back the anger rising in my chest and answered as gently as I could. Mommy has a lot on her plate right now, but she loves you, and she's doing her best. I didn't know if that was true, but I didn't want to poison the kids against her. No matter how badly she was spiraling, she was still their mother. The breaking point for Anna came a few months later. She called me one evening, her voice shaking. Can you take the kids for a few extra nights? She asked. Sure, I said, concerned. What's going on? I need some time, she admitted. Things with Dan are complicated. I wanted to press her for details, to ask her how she could let her life fall apart like this. But I held back. Instead, I focused on the kids, making sure they felt safe and secure while their mother tried to piece herself back together. Then came the bombshell. Anna was pregnant. She called me late one night, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and disbelief. "I'm having Dan's baby," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I sat there in stunned silence, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to ask. She let out a shaky breath. "I didn't plan for this to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do." In that moment, I felt a wave of emotions. Anger, pity, even a strange sense of relief that I was no longer tied to the chaos she was creating. "That's your choice to make, Anna," I said evenly. "But you need to figure out how you're going to handle it, for your sake and for the kid's sake." Over the next few weeks, Anna's life continued to unravel. She lost her new job after failing to show up for several shifts, and the financial strain of supporting Dan and preparing for a baby became overwhelming. Monica kept me updated on the gossip from the restaurant. Most of Anna's former friends had cut ties with her after learning about the affair and her continued poor decisions. "She's burned every bridge she had," Monica said one evening. "I don't know how she's going to come back from this." Part of me wanted to feel bad for Anna. She had once been the woman I loved, the mother of my children, and someone I believed in. But the choices she had made, over and over again, had led her to this point. Sympathy was hard to muster when she had done so much damage, not just to herself, but to everyone around her. Despite everything, I stayed focused on the kids. They were my anchor, my reason to keep moving forward. I made sure our time together was filled with laughter and new experiences, from weekend trips to the park to movie nights and baking experiments in the kitchen. They started to notice the changes in me, too. "You're happier now, Dad," my oldest said one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. I smiled at her, my chest tightening with emotion. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Meanwhile, my relationship with Monica continued to grow. We were cautious at first, keeping things low-key to avoid confusing the kids or stirring up drama. But it became clear to both of us that what we had was real. She wasn't just a friend or a rebound. She was someone who truly understood me, who brought light into my life after years of darkness. One evening, as we sat together on her porch, I told her, "You're the best thing to come out of all of this." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You deserve to be happy," she said simply. "We both do." In the months following Anna's move out, the divide between her life and mine became stark. I was finally finding my footing, building a healthier, happier routine for myself and the kids, while Anna's world seemed to be crumbling. It started with Dan. Shortly after Anna moved into her new apartment, word got out that their relationship wasn't the fairy tale she'd imagined. Monica filled me in on the details she'd heard through mutual friends. Dan had been fired from the restaurant for being caught high at work, and rumors about his drug use began to spread. Anna, desperate to keep him afloat, covered his expenses, including buying him a used car and helping him pay rent. "She's trying to save him," Monica told me one evening over the phone. "But he's dragging her down with him." The fallout hit Anna hard. Without Dan's job to anchor their relationship, his true colors began to show. He was unreliable, argumentative, and increasingly absent. But Anna clung to him, unwilling, or maybe unable, to let go of the man she'd risked everything for. The stress started to affect her parenting. She was late picking up the kids from school more than once, and when she did show up, she looked exhausted and frazzled. The kids began asking questions I didn't know how to answer. "Why is Mommy always so tired?" my son asked one day. I bit back the anger rising in my chest and answered as gently as I could. "Mommy has a lot on her plate right now, but she loves you, and she's doing her best." I didn't know if that was true, but I didn't want to poison the kids against her. No matter how badly she was spiraling, she was still their mother. The breaking point for Anna came a few months later. She called me one evening, her voice shaking. "Can you take the kids for a few extra nights?" she asked. "Sure," I said, concerned. "What's going on?" I need some time," she admitted. "Things with Dan are complicated." I wanted to press her for details, to ask her how she could let her life fall apart like this. But I held back. Instead, I focused on the kids, making sure they felt safe and secure while their mother tried to piece herself back together. Then came the bombshell. Anna was pregnant. She called me late one night, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and disbelief. "I'm having Dan's baby," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. I sat there in stunned silence, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Are you serious?" I finally managed to ask. She let out a shaky breath. "I didn't plan for this to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do." In that moment, I felt a wave of emotions. Anger, pity, even a strange sense of relief that I was no longer tied to the chaos she was creating. "That's your choice to make, Anna," I said evenly. "But you need to figure out how you're going to handle it, for your sake and for the kids' sake." Over the next few weeks, Anna's life continued to unravel. She lost her new job after failing to show up for several shifts, and the financial strain of supporting Dan and preparing for a baby became overwhelming. Monica kept me updated on the gossip from the restaurant. Most of Anna's former friends had cut ties with her after learning about the affair and her continued poor decisions. "She's burned every bridge she had," Monica said one evening. "I don't know how she's going to come back from this." Part of me wanted to feel bad for Anna. She had once been the woman I loved, the mother of my children, and someone I believed in. But the choices she had made, over and over again, had led her to this point. Sympathy was hard to muster when she had done so much damage, not just to herself, but to everyone around her. Despite everything, I stayed focused on the kids. They were my anchor, my reason to keep moving forward. I made sure our time together was filled with laughter and new experiences, from weekend trips to the park to movie nights and baking experiments in the kitchen. They started to notice the changes in me, too. "You're happier now, Dad," my oldest said one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. I smiled at her, my chest tightening with emotion. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." Meanwhile, my relationship with Monica continued to grow. We were cautious at first, keeping things low-key to avoid confusing the kids or stirring up drama. But it became clear to both of us that what we had was real. She wasn't just a friend or a rebound. She was someone who truly understood me, who brought light into my life after years of darkness. One evening, as we sat together on her porch, I told her, "You're the best thing to come out of all of this." She smiled, her eyes soft. "You deserve to be happy," she said simply. "We both do." As for Anna, her downward spiral served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly life can unravel when you lose sight of what truly matters. But I no longer felt tied to her mistakes or responsible for her choices. My focus was on the future, on building a life filled with love, stability, and joy. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on the right path. 6 months after Anna moved out, life had settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly normal, better than normal, even. The chaos and tension that used to dominate the house had been replaced with something quieter, more peaceful. I had my kids, my health, and Monica, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was living, not just surviving. Monica and I were careful about introducing our relationship to the kids. We didn't want to rush things or confuse them, but over time, it became clear that Monica wasn't just a passing presence in my life. She was becoming part of our family. One Saturday, I invited her and her daughter over for a picnic in the backyard. We spread a blanket under the big oak tree and spent the afternoon eating sandwiches, playing catch, and laughing until our sides hurt. At one point, my youngest tugged on Monica's sleeve and said, "You're fun. You should come over more." Monica beamed, her eyes meeting mine across the blanket. It was a simple moment, but it felt monumental, a sign that we were doing something right. Anna's life, on the other hand, was unraveling further. She gave birth to Dan's baby in the fall, a boy, and while I didn't wish her harm, I couldn't ignore the ripple effects her choices were having on our kids. Dan was still unreliable, drifting in and out of her life, leaving her to juggle a newborn and 2 older kids on her own. One evening, my oldest came home from her weekend with Anna and burst into tears. "Mommy and Dan were yelling a lot," she said, clutching her stuffed animal tightly. It scared me. Hearing that broke something inside me. I wanted to shield my kids from the mess Anna had created, but co-parenting meant I couldn't control what happened when they were with her. All I could do was be their constant, a safe, stable presence they could always rely on. I reached out to Anna after that incident, trying to approach the situation diplomatically. "The kids are noticing the tension," I said. "We need to figure out how to make this easier on them." She sounded tired, defeated. "I'm trying," she said softly. "It's just hard." It wasn't the first time she'd said those words, and it wouldn't be the last. Meanwhile, my relationship with Monica continued to blossom. We spent more time together, blending our families in ways that felt natural and easy. Her daughter and my kids got along like siblings, and I found myself looking forward to the moments we all shared. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Monica and I sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between us. "I never thought I'd feel like this again," I admitted, running my fingers along the rim of my glass. "Like what?" she asked, her voice soft. "Like I'm part of something good. Like I can trust someone completely." I looked at her, my chest tightening with emotion. "You've been my anchor through all of this, Monica. I don't know where I'd be without you." She reached for my hand, her eyes shimmering. "You've been mine too," she said. "The first time we told the kids about our relationship, I was nervous." Monica and I sat them down one Sunday afternoon, explaining that we cared about each other and wanted to spend more time together. My youngest, ever the comedian, wrinkled his nose. "Does that mean you're boyfriend and girlfriend?" We laughed, and Monica nodded. "I guess it does." "Does that mean she can stay for dinner more?" he asked, his tone hopeful. Monica smiled. "I think we can make that happen." Their acceptance felt like the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. Months turned into a year, and the contrast between my life and Anna's became even more pronounced. While I was thriving, building a future with Monica and growing closer to my kids, Anna was still stuck in the chaos she had created. She called me one night, her voice heavy with exhaustion. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep it all together?" I hesitated, unsure how to respond. "I just focus on what matters," I said finally. "The kids, my health, the people who make my life better." She was quiet for a long time before muttering, "I wish I could start over." I didn't say it, but the truth was, she had already had her chance to start over. She'd chosen a different path, and now she was dealing with the consequences. Looking back, I sometimes wondered if things could have turned out differently, if Anna and I could have saved our marriage, if she could have made better choices. But those thoughts didn't linger long. I had come to accept that some chapters in life end for a reason, and trying to rewrite them only prolongs the pain. Today, my life isn't perfect, but it's mine. I'm in a healthy, loving relationship with someone who values me. My kids are happy, thriving in a home filled with love and laughter. And I've learned that sometimes, the hardest endings lead to the best beginnings. As I stood in the kitchen one evening, watching Monica help my daughter with her homework, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for how far I'd come. Anna's choices might have shattered our marriage, but they also forced me to find a better path. And for that, I was finally at peace. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Cheating Storytelling for more gripping real-life tales. Catch you in the next video.